Yes! Finally! I've been sorted into Hufflepuff! I'm a Jedi Knight! I've joined Starfleet! I'm the Doctor's companion! I'm a Sailor Scout! Hi! Oh, you redecorated. I don't like it. Which reminds me, why are you in my dream?
And what tipped you off that you were dreaming?
I figured it was too good. And then you showed up with your dream-walking powers.
Yeah, by the way, I noticed something. Why the hell do you sleep standing up?
I am a pony. They sleep standing up. See?
Damn, I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
By the way, where is this exactly?
Oh, right. Welcome to the Dream Gates of Gibraltar. If you look to your left, you'll see the gates of Hades.
Oh, look at your cute little puppy.
Morpheus is not here at the moment, so you'll have to contend with me for now.
Morpheus? Where? Wait, can I meet Artemis or Hades?
No, they're busy. Either way, you must be right at home here.
Hey, I'm a Pegasus for a reason.
Speaking of mythology, Lauren Faust even advocated its use during the running of the episodes, or so I was told, as I'm sure you've noticed.
Heck yeah!
It may come as a surprise to you, but one of the mythologies I know least about is Greek and Roman mythology, and yet the show seems to use it the most, I would say. So, I have to ask, would the story of MLP fit into a Greek or Roman myth?
Well, that depends on how you look at it, but for the most part, I'd say no. It's no secret that the world of Equestria is rife with Greek and Roman symbols. From the get-go, we're treated to many different symbols and creatures from the myths, most notably Pegasus himself, who seems to have spawned a whole race of winged horses since mythological times. Pegasus was a creature very specific to Greek and Roman mythology, and you're not likely to find references to him anywhere else. I think the best way to look at the relationship between the ponies and mythology is to look at its strongest link. There is a reason why I geeked out particularly hard when the Chimera showed up a few weeks back. If you had a Greek and Roman bestiary, closed your eyes, flipped to a random page, and put whatever animal you found in the show, I'd be exceedingly happy. Just like I was with the Manticore, or the Griffins, or the Cockatrice. But I was waiting at the edge of my seat for a Chimera above all others.
Why? Is it your favorite or something?
Nope, not really. It all has to do with symbolism. The Chimera and the Pegasus are heavily linked. When Perseus cut off the Gorgon Medusa's head, her blood mixed with the earth and created the winged horse Pegasus. Cheerful! Athena tamed him and gave him to the Muses. Now let's talk about Bellerophon. Bellerophon was sent to King Iobates with a letter with his own death sentence on it. As a way of being gracious, the king gave this great hero the task of killing the Chimera as a way of giving him his death sentence. Bellerophon accepted, but knew that it could very well be his death. An oracle suggested that the night before the confrontation he seek out the help of Athena by spending the night in her temple. He did so, and Athena had pity on him and appeared in a dream and gave him a golden bridle and told him where to find the Pegasus drinking. Bellerophon awoke still holding the bridle. He found Pegasus, and the winged horse willingly came with him, and the two easily defeated the Chimera. The two became great heroes, but one day Bellerophon became so arrogant that he decided to ride Pegasus to Mount Olympus, but before he could reach the summit, Pegasus bucked him off and he fell to his ruin. Let's now compare this to the world of MLP. First and foremost, the Chimera. Firstly, we'll need to differentiate the difference between the traditional Chimera and the modern meaning. Just as being narcissistic is taken from the mythical figure Narcissus, many words in our vocabulary have origins in Greek and Roman myths, including the Chimera. The Chimera is an animal with a lion and a goat's head and a snake for a tail. There are slight variations, but generally the Chimera of Arezzo is how the Chimera is considered to look. But in modern connotation, a Chimera has a much broader meaning to it. It often refers to anyone or anything that is made up of many things. For instance, a human can be a chimera if they have two different DNAs. Not what I'm talking about here. As I was saying, the chimerism is a phenomenon that happens when there are two fraternal twins in the womb, but while they're still in the cellular stage, they fuse to become one being. By the modern definition, Discord is a chimera, and so is the Manticore, and the Cockatrice, and Gilda, and almost every creature in My Little Pony. So take into account the difference between the modern chimera and the traditional chimera that we're talking about. Anyway, just looking at the MLP Chimera and you know it's different from the traditional form. And while there are slight differentiations between the legend, they still never look like the one in MLP because it's always had the parts of a lion and never a tiger. And I can kinda understand why they did it. What do you think the most distinguishing feature of a lion is?
The mane?
Right, but what if you wanted to make it a girl?
Oh.
A lioness doesn't really have any distinguishing features, and if drawn incorrectly, might look like a bear rather than a cat. So to make sure they got the big cat motif down, they took a hop, skip, and a jump over to Asia and took the design of the largest cat in the world. I think the same can be said for how the stories of My Little Pony differentiate from Greek and Roman myths. In Some Pony to Watch Over Me, the Chimera was defeated, not killed, and by an Earth pony rather than a Pegasus. I guess she lost her touch. If the story of Bellerophon were an episode of My Little Pony, the story would stop short of Bellerophon hitting the ground and have him learn a lesson about arrogance or something. They'd also skip the part about Bellerophon having a death sentence, especially since the reason he had it was because the king's married daughter lusted after him. So while there are similarities, there are distinct differences. Speaking of mythological creatures, I always hope to see new Greek and Roman mythical creatures in the show, but I know that there are some creatures that I will never see. No sphinxes, no centaurs, much to Lyra's dismay, essentially nothing that's part human. At least that's what I thought. Enter Putting Your Hoof Down, where we have a minotaur complete with hedge maze. A minotaur is described as part human, part bull. In My Little Pony, however, emphasis on the bull. They minimalized the human and essentially just made him anthropomorphic. Again, we can use the visual cues to parallel the story. The Minotaur in the original myth requires 7 ewes and 7 maids sent into the labyrinth in which he lives as sacrifice for his consumption every year, until one day Theseus enters the maze with a sword and slays the Minotaur and uses a string to find his way out of the labyrinth. In My Little Pony, Fluttershy enters the maze where Iron Will dwells, and they both leave alive. Lame. Actually, it could be said that Fluttershy doesn't exactly leave intact, as her kindness has been killed, and at the end of the episode, Iron Will does get defeated. I mean, he doesn't get paid. But since the extent of death is slightly inconvenienced, it lacks the, shall we say, gravitas of the original story. Speaking of gravitas, if we're talking about mythological figures, we need to talk about Heracles.
Don't you mean Hercules?
Tomato, tomato. Heracles was the illegitimate half-son of Zeus. Because of this, his wife Hera had a vendetta against the child, as she did with most of Zeus's bastards. She made it so he was subject to perform the commands of Eurystheus. This is kind of an abridged version, but I think I've kept you guys here long enough. In any event, we can see a parallel to Twilight and Heracles. At least in one task, they both had the mission of collecting Cerberus. Heracles did this by wrestling the three-headed hellhound into submission. Twilight played fetch with it. Even Cerberus's design seems off. I mean, yes, all we know is that it's a three-headed dog, but an English bulldog? Really? An English bulldog couldn't eat you if it wanted to. It quite literally doesn't have the jaw for it. I know I'm being picky, but I always saw Cerberus as a hellhound, not a hell non-working dog. I thought he'd be a bloodhound, or at least some sort of pit mix like in Harry Potter or the Disney movie. Here, even when it's looking all angry, it doesn't look intimidating. Give My Little Pony props though, it did mention Tartarus. It didn't show it, but you know, only Disney movies can get away with showing the 7th layer of hell to kids. But even if we assume that Tartarus in Equestria is similar to the Tartarus in the myths, that doesn't account for why Twilight is skipping off as if she's going to a picnic.
Maybe she knows Celestia will prevent her from staying there.
That's not reassuring, as we find out later that Celestia didn't know Twilight had found her dog. Also, her dog? Is Celestia Hades? At least she must have some connection to the underworld. The long and the short of it is that even though My Little Pony will make countless beautiful references to Greek and Roman mythology, it will never make the full illusion of the structure. Something about the main target demographic, I suppose. Still, I'll take what I can get.
Indeed, and if you don't mind me deviating from Greek and Roman mythology, there is another way MLP seems to be trying to emulate mythology that I would like to examine, and that is with mythic heroes. In this case, we have Twilight and her story, at least up to her ascension to Alicornhood. I want to look and see if she is anything like the heroes we see in mythology, at least in some ways. Now, in regards to the hero's journey or monomyth, I was not going to touch on that, but if you want to know more about it in the context of MLP, there's a link to Cloud Cuckoo Country's video in the description. I would suggest watching it and subbing to him if you have not already. Either way, I have a few well-known heroes to take a look at. Though just to note, these are very brief oversimplifications of their legends, for sake of time and whatnot. First is Cuchulainn, the champion of Ireland. Originally born with the name Setanta, he joined the Ulaid and King Conchobar, and was given the name Cuchulainn, meaning the Hound of Cuchulainn in some translations, by killing King Conchobar's guardian hound, as well as kicking the collective asses of all his peers, all at the age of 6. Afterwards, he continues to serve King Conchobar and the Ulaid, taking on armies and the other champions of Ireland. Spoiler alert, he wins. The second hero is Sigurd the Volsung, also known as Sigurd the Dragon Slayer from Norse mythology. His family is filled with badasses, and is descended from the demigod Sigi, whose father was Odin. During the saga of the Volsungs, Sigurd is assisted by Odin in slaying the dragon Fafnir, along with a lot of other things he does afterward. The third is Gilgamesh, the Sumerian demigod king, 2/3 god to be precise.
2/3?
Oh, right. Well, his mother was a goddess, and at least at the time they did it, his first father was human. They had sex, and then Gilgamesh's mother went on to have sex with another god. According to Sumerian understanding of genetics and whatnot, both of these men, both the human and the god, are considered the father. Hence, 2/3 god.
Interesting. Actually, that could be a thing if we take chimerism into account.
Yeah, anyway, Gilgamesh's story can be summed up as he and his brother, lover, whatever, Enkidu, kicking the ass of pretty much everything from Humbaba to the Bowl of Heaven.
Alright, but what does this have to do with My Little Pony?
Glad you asked. If you take a look at all these heroes, they had done things that one would consider incredible, extraordinary, inhuman, etc. And often they have interactions with the gods in some way. However, putting aside those, and the possible existence of the monomyth in MLP, the similarities seem to end for the most part. You see, with each of these myths, there's an almost anti-Fim element to them. Starting back with Cuchulainn, most of his feats were all done alone and against massive odds or groups of people. Now, it is true that the main six have tackled large odds before too, but Cuchulainn's solo success is something I would sure would be quite alien to the show, as he seems to simply be too good to actually need the power of friendship, or he may be, I dare say, greater than it. In fact, while I'm on the subject, Sigurd and Gilgamesh were pretty badass on their own too. When it comes to Sigurd, the subject of love comes up in his legend quite a bit, though it all seems unrequited. Relationships that do exist are often later betrayed, and the affections one may have for another are often not felt by the being that they have affection for. For instance, family love is betrayed when Fafnir is corrupted by the cursed ring in Varanot. He kills his father and betrays his brother, turning to the dragon that Sigurd kills later. Romantic instances are also ever present in the legend as well, such as when Grimhild made Sigurd forget about Brunhild so that he would marry Grimhild's sister, allowing Grimhild to try and court Brunhild, who we later find out does not love Grimhild at all. Consequences, of course, follow. Either way, this would not fit in the context of MLP from a theme standpoint because the power of love is a powerful force that has saved the day in ways more literal than most, and unrequited love always lost in the end, like it did with Chrysalis. Last is Gilgamesh, which probably provides the most jarring example out of the three. Now, I love his legend. One of the reasons is that it seems to show the potential and limits of mortals with incredible execution, if I do say so myself. While I did mention that Gilgamesh was epically strong on his own, one of his most important fights placed importance on the power of friendship, specifically with Enkidu and the solar deities, Shamash, against Humbaba. They win. And later in the myth, when Gilgamesh and Enkidu defeat the Bowl of Heaven, they recognize even more by the city of Uruk as heroes and have grown quite proud. At the same time, the god Enlil is still mourning the loss of Humbaba, and his punishment kills Enkidu, who was in some part responsible. How much so depends on your translation. Gilgamesh completely breaks and fears for his own mortality. He sets off to become a god, but ultimately fails. The reason this would be the most jarring example is because we get to see in this myth that the power of friendship, while powerful, has limits. The difference here is more obvious. In MLP, friendship, and in some cases love, solve everything from the monumental to the mundane. And this is the reason Twilight ascended. Though to be fair, Gilgamesh seemed to be tackling problems of more massive magnitude than Twilight and her friends did, and his victories were earned without the use of an instant win MacGuffin. Now to be fair, these were just a few heroes that come to mind. Of course there are countless more, but I only wanted to focus on a few because to look at MLP in the context of every myth and legend would take an impractically long amount of time, aside from other things as well. But either way, like what I said earlier, the only way the characters in MLP, specifically Twilight, fit in with the bill of a mythological hero is that they have done some impressive things in the context of their peers and interact with what some of the fandom have regarded as in-universe goddesses. But beyond that, the themes and the legends seem to clash with the ones in MLP, or at least the ones present here, though certainly others as well.
So we both seem to have come to the conclusion that somewhat yes, mostly no.
Pretty much.
Alright, well, what happens now?
I assume I should thank everyone for watching, as well as you for agreeing to do the collab, and take my leave.
But wait, how am I supposed to get out of here?
Oh, the answer to that is very simple. Wake up.
Gah! There's got to be an easier way to do this.
Like I did with Cream.
As a way of being gracious, the king gave him the king gave this great hero the task of killing the Chimera, and I should say Chimera. I've been saying Chimera because of chimerism. It really should be Chimera. I know that's how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I pronounce it wrong because I suck.
Now, I love his legend. One of the reasons is that it seems to show the potential and limits of mortals with incredible execution, if I do say so myself.
But I've said Chimera already. Whatever, I'll just say it my own way. If people want to correct me, then screw them. If the story of Bellerophon were an episode of My Little Pony, the story would stop short of Bellerophon hitting the ground and have him learn a lesson about arrogance or something. They'd also skip the part about Bellerophon having a death sentence, especially since the reason he had it was because the king's married daughter lusted after him. So while there are similarities, there are distinct differences. Speaking of Mythical creatures. Damn it, I always want to say magical creatures. Stupid Harry Potter.
In MLP, friendship, and in some cases love, solve everything from the monumental to the mundane.
She made it so he was subject to perform the commands of Eurystheus. Okay, this is another one. I don't often say his name. Eurystheus. Yeah, okay. This is kind of an here, even when it's looking at all angry, it doesn't give I don't think. But even if we assume that Tartarus in Equestria is similar to the Tartar, at least she must have some. Shoot. The long and the short of it is that even though My Little Pony will make him.